Hey boys and girls, what's up? Hope everybody's doing well on this Wednesday. I'm gonna making your lesson for tomorrow. So tomorrow, what we're gonna do is we're gonna change our gears a little bit. We're not gonna work on oceanography anymore. We're gonna start reading this book right here, and the title is "You Wouldn't Want to Work on the Hoover Dam," and the subtitle right there, "An Explosive Job You'd Rather Not Do." So, I just give you a little bit of overview of the Hoover Dam. The Hoover Dam is considered to be one of the seven wonders of the world. Now, it was man-made, so it's not like an ocean or something. Men actually made the Hoover Dam, and it's one of the most seven incredibly put together pieces of construction ever. So when we read this book, I'm going to read a little bit of it to you today and tomorrow because I think it's really a cool book. The Hoover Dam is an amazing, amazing dam that actually uh, is found in four different states, if you can believe that. So this is what I'm going to give you to do, and I cannot print it out for you. It's what do you see, what do you think, okay? And you have four things at the top. It says text title, what do you see, what facts did you learn, and what do you think in the gray right there. And we're only going to do two of them today, okay? And I'm going to show you which two. The two we're going to do right underneath, I pretty much wrote this down on my whiteboard, is the crash on page 6 and good news on page 8, okay? So we're going to talk about what happened back in these days. So back in the 1920s, there was something called the Great Depression, and it was caused by a bunch of banks that went down. I'm sorry about moving this around, I'm trying to get the book up. It was about a bunch of banks. We just lost a bunch of money. People were out of work. Everybody was trying to find a job, and that's why they called it the crash, because the economy crashed. And it's crashed a little bit because of the coronavirus, but not nearly as bad as this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this to you along with along with a lot of these captions, and you can write down some of the things you learned and what you see and what do you think about it, okay? So first, the crash. New York City is 1,550 miles from Amarillo. You have never been to New York, but events happening there will turn your life upside down. The New York Stock Exchange on Wall Street is a bustling hall where traders buy and sell shares in companies. Investors make fortunes as share prices rise and fall during the 1920s. Then, in October 1929, share prices suddenly drop. Wealthy people see their fortunes disappear overnight. Companies all over the country go bust, and millions of people lose their jobs. Many go on protest marches to demand work. So this was a very bad time in America. People started losing all their money, and they had no way to feed their families, so people began to get desperate. So here's a few of the things. There's the boss right there with the "you're fired" over it, and there's his workers, and it says the effects of the stock market crash spread very quickly. When the boss arrives at your construction site, you fear the worst. Then the banks. Banks start to fail, and people rush to take their money out. This makes a bad situation even worse. So all the people that had money in the bank wanted to go to the bank and pull their money out of the bank so they could have some money to live on, because nobody had any money. Everything crashed. And people would line up and wait in line for bread. It was a very, very tough time. It was so tough, in fact, that people who can't afford gas for their cars hitch them to horses instead. These horse-drawn cars are nicknamed Hoover wagons after U.S. President Herbert Hoover. Many blame him for the economic disaster. I don't know about all that. I was not alive. So here's a few things at the bottom, some pretty cool little things. This guy on the left here, laying down, it says many people lose their homes because they cannot pay their bills. They have to sleep on the streets. The middle one, towns that don't have enough jobs for their own citizens put up signs telling the jobless people from other places to stay away. And this one on the end, many are so poor they can't even buy food. Thousands stand in bread lines to be given free soup and bread. So a very, very difficult time for America back in those days. just a really horrible time. Now, this is some basic things that the kids did back in the day. You know, why can't you give my dad a job? Rich kids don't starve. Why should we? Kind of like some of the protesting you're seeing these days. Just a different topic in a way. We're not necessarily starving. We're fighting, you know, racial equality. And so these kids are doing that back in the day. So these protests are nothing new. Up at the top it says, children march to demand jobs for their fathers. At this time, it's not common for women to work outside the home, which is very different now. A lot of women work outside of the home. And then the handy hint, hitch a free ride on a freight car to look for work in other towns. So many of the people that lived in certain towns would get on a freight train and they would ride to another town to try and find work so they could feed their family. So it's a very, very difficult time, okay? So this is gonna be your first one, the crash, page 6, just like I showed you right there, all right? Now let's go to page 8. And this is gonna be called good news, okay? In these trying times, something good had to happen, all right? So the good news. While you are traveling from town to town looking for work, you hear about an exciting new construction project. The world's biggest dam is going to be built across the Colorado River. Author Powell Davis of the U.S. Reclamation Service thought of it. He suggested building the dam to supply surrounding states with water and to stop the Colorado River from flooding. It's such a huge project that 6 of the biggest construction companies in the United States joined forces to build it. You set off for Nevada in the hope of finding work on the dam. Now, the great thing about this good news is that what's going on? They're going to make a huge dam. And guess what they need in order to make it? People. And everybody was looking for work, so a lot of people started moving out to Las Vegas in that area so that they could start working on this dam, the Hoover Dam. So let's look down here. It says either too much or too little. All right. It said floods. Every spring, snow melting high up in the Rocky Mountains drains into the Colorado River, which is where they built the Hoover Dam. They were trying to block the Colorado River. The swollen river overflows its banks and floods farmland farther downstream. So when they did not have the dam in place, it would go and it would flood people's farms. And then their crops would be worthless and they would have nothing to eat and they couldn't sell anything, thus they would have no money. But on the other hand, there was a drought in other places. It said, meanwhile, land farther away is as dry as a desert. Farms here badly need a reliable water supply. Well, when they built this Colorado River, when they built the Hoover Dam on the Colorado River, it gave these places that did not have any water for their crops. Pretty cool, right? So this is the man that was kind of like overlooking the building of the Hoover Dam. This guy on the right, you can see him in the gray suit. His name is Arthur Powell Davis. And he was sitting there saying this has possibilities because he saw how the way the cliffs were. And he knew he could make a dam right there and block the water. Let's see what President Hoover said. President Herbert Hoover has been the driving force behind the project since he was the U.S. Secretary of Commerce. It has taken years to get approval for the dam from Congress and from all the states affected by the plan. And then right here, handy hint, take plenty of water with you when you're traveling across the desert. So those were good ideas because look at this land right here. If you look, and I know it's just a cartoon, but do you see any trees? There are no trees. There are really not too many plants. And that should tell you that there's probably not a lot of water. So a lot of those people didn't have water. It wasn't like it is now where you could just pull off on a service station, pull up to a service station and get some water. You had to carry the water with you. It was a different time. You know, it's not as nice as it is now, how we kind of like just go into the convenience store, and that's why they call it a convenience store, because it's very convenient. Most of these people were dying of thirst when they went out of this part of the area. So for your second text title, you're going to do the good news part, okay? And you're going to have to write it down just like I did. You know, it won't take you but a few minutes. And fill out this chart, take a snapshot of it, and we're going to do some more on the Hoover Dam tomorrow. Okay? I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll be looking for your stuff tomorrow. Thank you. Have a good day.